I hope you're all excited about what the possibilities are. We're now going to hear much more about some of the specifics. And first, I just want to remind people, I forgot to do this at the beginning, you have 4x6 cards in your packet. We want you to write questions down on those, and please put the name of the speaker that you'd like to address that particular question. We'll be collecting those at the end of the 3 talks. During our break, we'll be looking at those and using your questions to address to our panel during our question and answer period. So please take the time to do that and hand it to an usher as you're leaving on the break. So it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Law. I had a chance to speak with him, and he'll be talking to you about some of the personal reasons that he has become involved in this particular project. Paul is Director of Medical Informatics at Kennedy Krieger Institute, an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in the Department of Pediatrics. He's the founder of IAN, and he is going to share how IAN, in its first 2 years, has helped to advance autism knowledge. He will present an overview of promising studies published and underway across a wide variety of disciplines. So I'm very anxious to hear some of this. If you ever go on the IAN website, and it is very hard to leave. There's so much information and interesting ways to look at it. So, Dr. Law.
Thank you, Dr. Donnelly. I guess everybody can hear me okay. So it's great to be here. I had a great trip getting over here. It's always a pleasure to visit California, particularly this time of year. I particularly appreciate Bonnie and all the fun that we've had working together to get this conference brought together. Connie, thank you for the wonderful talk that you just did. She represents the IAN project so well. Let's get the formalities out of the way first. So I also have no financial relationship or interest with any proprietary entity producing healthcare goods or services related to the content of this CME activity. Like Connie, I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about my story and how I became involved in autism research. Mine's probably going to be a little bit longer than hers, so please bear with me. This will definitely be the longest slide. So I grew up in the Congo, out in the middle of a village that was beyond remote. There was no roads, no running water, no electricity, we couldn't buy flour. We made our own sugar. I mean, this was a little house on the prairie to the hilt. And my mother was a public health nurse. My dad did a lot of development projects, like working on roads and hospitals and bridges and that sort of thing. So I was exposed to the healthcare needs of a place like the Congo, and that influenced my interest in going to medical school and returning to the Congo. So I went to Johns Hopkins because it was the leading institute in international health. Also turns out to be the place that described autism, but that's sort of a separate thing. While I was taking a year off of medical school to get a degree in international health, a master's in public health and international health, that's when my son was diagnosed with autism. And a couple months later, I was sort of very vigilant and jumped in and wanted to learn about autism. So I said, well, I'm in medical school. I'm just going to see if I can do a rotation in autism. Well, the medical school curriculum consisted of 20 minutes of lecture on autism that was as part of a larger lecture for the day. So I went to somebody at Kennedy Krieger Institute and said, well, could you help me design an elective in autism? So I did this 1-month elective in autism, and I became very concerned about what was known about how to treat my cute little 3-year-old who was diagnosed on his birthday, by the way. And furthermore, when I looked into the medical literature, I was very concerned that, as Connie said, autism research was really moving at a snail's pace, and it just wasn't very satisfying to see that as a parent and a professional. So by the end of the month, I had a concept paper. Now, I was just a little medical student. I had no business doing this, but I scheduled a meeting with the president and CEO of Kennedy Krieger Institute, and went in with this sort of concept document that, this is what we ought to be doing to help accelerate autism research. I was not so much interested in any particular project to do within autism research as I was interested in how does one accelerate research in and of itself, which is a little bit of a different question. But anyway, I went in and talked to him, and he encouraged me, and before long, I found myself working on some projects to accelerate autism research. Now, we as an autism community, it's very important that we kind of get a hold of this idea. What does it mean? What does the ideal research infrastructure look like to accelerate the cause of autism research? If you look at cancer, well, if you look at pediatric cancer, for instance, there's something called pediatric oncology groups, and there's a network all across the country. And they're extremely organized, and research is going on there with a great intensity, and there's lots of funding, and there's a lot of organization that's going into that. The average kid with cancer is on 4 or so research protocols at one time, in addition to getting very high quality evidence-based care. So there's this culture of learning and research that is much more intense than what we have in autism. 95% of kids with cancer are in a research study. In autism, 10% are in a research study, approximately, based on the best estimates I could get from the statistics that we have. So we have, in many, many ways, we are lacking in the infrastructure that's really going to accelerate autism research in the way that we would really like to see it go. And so my career in autism has been about how does one organize the things of research, and how does one engage the people who are a part of research, and looking for ways to kind of bring us together to accelerate research, and working with the many other people that share the same passion that I have. So that's sort of my story. My parents are still in the Congo and doing great work. So Ian accelerates research in many different ways, not just one, and it's going to be hard to sort of give you a full picture of what we're doing in a brief talk. We're doing environmental research, we're facilitating environmental research, where there are many studies involving looking into brain structure, genetics, treatments, the impact on families, autoimmune issues, and so forth. A couple of overarching themes that you'll see over the next few slides as I go through them is, that there are probably multiple subtypes of autism. The director of the National Institutes of Mental Health, whenever he talks about autism now, he talks about them as autisms. It's really not one disorder. It's multiple different disorders, and this has great implications for how we think about how autism research needs to proceed. And then there's questions of, once we have identified what those subtypes are, do different types need to have different ideal treatments for them. But this has implications for how large a database needs to be to sort of facilitate research, because if you have some rare subtypes of autism, then you have to have large numbers of total people so that you have enough of that subtype, right? I hope that makes sense. We also believe strongly that in the value of the parent-provided information, and also that this was something that really was there to be leveraged, because unlike in cancer, where we have this very organized care delivery system where kids are coming in and getting treatment, and that can be the home for research, which it is. In autism, we don't have a home for our kids in the same way. Things are sort of distributed across autism centers and the educational system and different places where therapy is being provided. And there's no one place that sort of kind of brings families together and where research can be organized. So we felt like the parent we should just go straight to the parent as one way of accomplishing our goals. This is not intended for you to be able to read, but this is, we've been busy writing scientific papers using the data from Ian, and we've had many collaborators also using the data and in different ways. And I'm just picking a few of our scientific contributions, and we're going to talk about them very briefly in the next few slides. And this is going to be kind of like, it's kind of like when you're skipping a rock. We're just going to just barely kind of touch on different things that we're doing within Ian. And but there's a lot more than I could go over right now. So a good place to start is twin studies. So let me give you a little bit of background on twin studies and then tell you about our particular twin study. So twin studies have been really important in autism to help look at the relative influences of genetics versus environment. Almost every disease, there are twin studies, and it helps you to look at this question. And what you're looking for is the difference between the concordance in identical twins versus fraternal twins. So if you have twin sets where there's one affected and they're identical, if the chances that the other one is going to have autism is really high, and then you compare that to the fraternal twins and it's much lower in fraternal twins or non-identical twins, then that suggests what you call genetic loading and would suggest that genetics plays an important role. So the studies that have been done in the past have shown somewhere around, an approximate average of around 90% of identical twins are concordant. If one has it, the other one has it. And then, if for fraternal twins or non-identical twins, 0 to 20% is the concordance rate. And that suggests a very strong genetic component. It doesn't mean that there aren't environmental factors that are needed to interact with the genes that may be causing autism. It doesn't by any means say that environment is not important. But it does strongly suggest that genes are very important to autism. Now, the largest twin study prior to Ian was 50 twin sets, so 100 kids. And after a few months that we were launched, we had a lot of twin sets from all across the country and a little bit of information about them. And so our first study was on 277 twin sets, or 5 times the largest twin study ever done prior to. Almost every study we do is the largest study of its type, which is pretty neat. Now, the quality of our data is often not as good as other studies, but sometimes the numbers really outweigh that issue. So anyway, in our study, we found that around the same percentage of identical twins were concordant, that there's a higher number of concordant fraternal twins than have been reported in the past. And there's actually some very recent twin studies that have come out that have shown that this number is increasing. Some of the real recent studies, some of which are unpublished and I'm not really supposed to talk about, are showing that this number appears to be increasing, suggesting maybe that the type of autism that's being diagnosed today is maybe different than 15, 20 years ago when the older twin studies were being done.